Gracious and loving God, thank you for bringing us together again today on this Thursday. Thank you for bringing us and making this a tradition where we get together and continue to find wealth in your word, the word that has been brought down to us from generation to generation and continues to nourish us on this day and bring not only new ideas to our minds, but also to our hearts. We say all this in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.
Excellent. Well, thank you. Thank you all for coming. Yay, I'm excited.
Happy April Fool's Day.
Oh, yeah, that's right. April Fool's Day. You ruined our opportunity, my opportunity to pull some horrible leg trick. But I'm so conscious of being the only guy here. It was really and being the only one talking. I want to get out of the way so that I'm not like mansplaining things. But
Oh, we won't let you do that.
okay, thank you. So the Transfiguration. What a fascinating text, right? And thank you for I think it was Liz and Deb for bringing in the synoptics and also the different translations. Interestingly, really interesting that the Transfiguration does not appear in John. In spite of the fact that John is in many ways kind of the most overtly Christological of the Gospels, and I'll go into that word Christology later. So I do, as is my want, I have like a little slideshow to lean on here. So let me see if I can bring that up. Can I bring that up, folks? Yes, I think I can. Share screen. There I am. And I will present. Okay. Can you see that?
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, what a picture.
That's
Yeah.
a good picture. I like that.
Yeah. One of the things I've discovered about the Transfiguration is if you do a Google search, a Google image search for the Transfiguration, it's very difficult to not find a Swedish Jesus. Jesus is always from Norway or from Scandinavia, particularly when you're dealing with the Transfiguration. So I thought, let me see if I can find one that is a little bit more ambiguous, and I found this nice, more abstract version of the Transfiguration. So let me see. Today we'll look briefly at the translations that Deb brought before us, and also we'll look at the synoptics and see what we can see there in terms of the variations. I'd like to introduce a little bit more the notion of Christology, because the Transfiguration is central to any kind of Christological understanding. And then there's this peculiar thing, which is the Messianic secret, which is a really this funny thing to try and get your brain around, and I haven't quite got my brain around it, and we'll see if you guys can get your brain around it. And then, of course, we, as always, we kind of wrap things up with some speculations about what all this may mean in terms of the theology and the pastoral side of our faith. This is the let me see. This is the various translations that Deb provided for us. Oh, sorry. I don't know how. Well, there we go. So I haven't looked over them carefully myself yet, but maybe we'll give us a moment or two to look and see if we see any interesting differences. Did you, Deb, did you notice any, when you pulled them out, did you notice any peculiar differences between them?
I had to unmute myself there. There were a couple different things that was, you know, they were dwellings in one version and memorials in another version, shrine, the things that the disciples wanted to build for,
Yeah.
that
Isn't that,
there were memorials, shrines, tabernacles, and dwellings. So all four of them used a slightly different translation.
isn't that interesting?
And just the endings too, which is what really has always puzzled me, is why does it have to be a secret? You know, they were charged, they were ordered to not to tell anybody. They were charged not to tell anybody. They were sworn to secrecy and they were ordered,
Right.
and they were, you know, they were puzzled. In one of them, they're puzzled, like it's the message, they're puzzled.
Uh-huh.
And then the one that I thought was weird was in the message when they talked about a light radiant cloud.
Ah.
And there's just a plain old cloud and all the rest of them.
Isn't that interesting? Huh.
You know, there were other things, but nothing
Yeah.
that.
Well, see, this is great. This is demonstrating for us one way in which, you know, kind of farming out the homework really helps a lot, because you get a page like this and it's like, there's just so much text in front of you. But Deb, you were able to kind of point us to all the relevant little details that I would not have, you know, it would have taken us half an hour to find. But isn't that interesting, those various things? That 4 very different kinds of shelters that are being built: a tabernacle, a dwelling, memorials, and shrines. All 4 have very different connotations. Although I guess tabernacle, shrine, and memorial, maybe tabernacle and shrine seem to have a similar connotation.
Yeah.
Dwelling.
Dwelling?
Yeah. Feels different.
Dwelling is just like a house or something like that. Geez.
Yeah.
It reminds me a little bit of when I was in Sunday school years and years ago, elementary Sunday school. I remember we had built Succoth booths for one of the Jewish holidays.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, I always thought in my mind, I connected building these dwellings with the booths that they built during this festival. So I don't know if they are connected at all, but that was in my child mind. That's kind of stuck with me, that dwelling seemed, and the dwelling seemed like the same thing to me, but
Yeah.
it's terrible that I can't even remember what the purpose of the booth was. But
you remember the booth.
Remember the booth.
Yes, we had a very hands-on Sunday school education in my first church. So
Great. So I was just looking at the different ones to see if there's any, if the word beloved is the same all the way through. I guess it's not. There 2 of them use the word beloved. Oh, look. Wow. This is wonderful. 2. Hello. Hello, Bob. Can you hear us? Huh. Well, wonderful. Welcome, Bob, if you're there. We're just talking about the Transfiguration. So let me see here. So
Yeah.
yes, I was just mentioning that the beloved is in two of them, and the other two are what is it? The one that this is my son whom I dearly love, and in the message it was, what was it?
Marked, my son marked by my love.
Marked by my love, yeah. Which is slightly different. All of them have rabbi, huh? All of them have the word, have Jesus is referred to as rabbi.
Master in the King James Version.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, you know, I think this exercise of looking at the let me stop the share. Oh no, let me just, let me stop the share briefly. This exercise of looking at the translations can be a very fruitful one, in terms of providing just slightly different emphases, and slightly different connotations that the words have, because building a memorial is different from building a dwelling, right? And being beloved maybe has a slightly different connotation from marked by my love. And it is yet another kind of demonstration of the way in which our tradition is both susceptible to I guess it depends on how you want to think about it, either challenged by or enriched by the kind of the development of the translations and the kind of the malleability of the text. So let's look again at the let's look now at the if I can get it up again. Where'd it go? It disappeared. Let me get it back again. Sorry about that, folks. Okay. Where did you guys go? You disappeared. Okay. There you are. Ay, ay, ay. Okay. All right. Sorry. I'm like doing shenanigans here.
No shenanigans.
Yeah. I shouldn't have stopped the share is what I should. Okay. No, admit again. What did I do? Am I sharing?
Yeah.
Yes,
I am. Okay.
Synoptics,
Yeah.
very tiny, but
Okay. So I gotta get this out of the way here. And present. Okay. So here we are on for the synoptics. So we there are, as I mentioned before, this story does not show up in the Gospel of John, but it does show up in the three synoptics. So there are three different versions of this story, and now I think it was Liz, wasn't it?
Yep.
Who brought us these? Did you notice anything peculiar, Liz?
I was charmed at the slightly different descriptions of how white the clothes became, dazzling white and the bleaching, and no one on earth could do this, and so on. And somehow if you take all three of these together, they really give a very full picture of what's going on, not just because of the description of how white the clothing is, but what the three disciples are observing of the conversation between Moses, Elijah, and Jesus, and wondering who is terrified. You know, when you read all three, you see that the disciples are terrified, and then there's a description of when they're walking back down the mountain, they kept silent and didn't say anything. You know, but they kept silent, and they were a little worried about why they're supposed to keep silent, and so on.
Right.
I don't know, it's a little like doing a research paper, and each reference you look at gives you yet another clue to make a decision on what it is, or to understand the fullness of something.
Right. Right.
Yeah, that's what I noticed, that it was that after doing these three, and also there's a reference in the second letter of Peter to this, where
right. I forgot.
right, where there's there's yet another reflection. I was an eyewitness and I saw this, is what Peter says.
Right. Right. Oh, I should have concluded that. I'm sorry, Liz.
It did get emailed to everybody.
Yes.
But I thought that was yet another point of view.
Yes. Yeah.
Mhm.
Exactly. Yeah. How terrific. So, am I right then that from what you said, Liz, that really the fear of the disciples doesn't really show up in Mark so much, but it shows up in the other two? Is that right?
He did not know what to say, for they were terrified.
Oh yeah. So
And then later on, it seems to indicate that the disciples are terrified.
yeah.
Yeah. Mhm. The first, the reading Mark, it doesn't, in reading Mark, it's unclear who's terrified.
Yeah.
But then
Yeah.
as you read the others, it becomes clear.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Looks like we got some pretty serious external noise there coming from somebody.
Where is that?
I'm not
I
sure.
wonder if that's coming from the iPhone that appears to be Bob's iPhone. And if so, that phone is connected to us and the speaker doesn't realize it. I don't know. I'm just guessing.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay. All right. So let's see here.
Can you mute that one?
I can try.
I was thinking I'm going to call Bob. I think he's got a landline, and I'm going to call and see if that's what's happening.
Yeah, I don't see a way to actually just mute the one individual.
And Lori just sent us a message that says she's having internet instability.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I am too.
Okay.
Here we are.
Because we're in.
Oh,
because
Deb
it's-
is too.
because we're in.
Yep.
I probably will have,
coming.
I don't know.
Well, one thing I wanted to mention in case I do get kicked off. I'm so grateful that this lesson was picked, because the two questions that always came to my mind
Yeah.
was, number one, why did this happen? And number two, how did the disciples know it was Elijah and Moses?
Right.
Mhm.
Right. Good. Especially in this kind of pre-modern era, when they wouldn't have had, like, because I've often thought about that and thought, like, like, because Elijah and Moses were were like the most important figures in Judaism, right? So it would be like Abraham Lincoln and George Washington, right?
Mm.
So right, but and we would recognize them because we have images of them from books and such, and even photographs of Lincoln. No photographs of Washington, of course, but so there must be just. I mean, I guess the one way to answer that question would be that these two are just so, Moses and Elijah are just so prevalent in the culture that they would be recognized. Or another way is just to say that it's a kind of a divine thing, I guess. That like that's the way you could explain it. Like, oh, you explain it because they recognize them just because they would recognize them as a result of the kind of miraculous quality of the story. So, but I don't know if either of those solutions are helpful at all. What was the other thing that you brought up, Lori? I'm having a hard time concentrating because of the background noise.
Just to let you know, I called
Maybe-
Bob's landline and left a message.
Okay.
Maybe there was the one inside of,
Bob's phone he's off video and he's muted.
There we go.
He must have just gone muted because
Oh,
he wasn't before.
Yeah.
okay.
Aha.
Okay.
Phew.
Sorry. Okay. So, what was the second thing that you brought up, Lori?
well, and I guess was the question, why did this happen? Why, was it in preparation for what he was about to do? And this was to strengthen him? Was this to show Peter, James, and John, his divinity? I mean, because, we have the advantage years later of seeing the whole story.
Right.
So they never knew about the baptism and the dove coming down unless maybe it was shared, and God making a comment there. So they're just going by what they've witnessed.
Right.
And they've seen a lot of his miracles and so forth.
Uh-huh.
But was that the reason why? Why was this necessary?
Thank you so much. And it's actually a really, really good segue, right? Because it kind of lets us in on kind of the multiple layers of complexity that we get with the Bible, right? Because if you think about, like, from our vantage as readers, like, we have all kinds of knowledge, right? That the disciples don't have. We have all kinds of knowledge that it's almost like we have, in a sense, we're almost omniscient. We almost have a knowledge that, our knowledge is kind of equivalent to Christ's knowledge, because, like, he perhaps has a sense of what's going to happen and all this kind of stuff. And we have that knowledge too, because we're familiar with the tradition. But if you think about it from the perspective of the characters in the story, like, what do they know? Do they know about the dove alighting on Jesus when he was baptized? Do they know about, these various things? What do they know and what do they not know? And then you add again another layer of complexity to this whole business, which is, what did the early Christians know, right? And what did the early followers of Jesus know, and what were they just in the process of kind of figuring out as these texts were being written? So, and I think that last part is perhaps what's relevant here, right? Because in a sense, when you're trying to figure out what Jesus was and who Jesus was, these are the issues of the Christology issues. So in some ways, this is a nice segue into the next section of this discussion, right? Because you have to think about the early Christians wondering about Christ and thinking, well, what is this Christ, and what is the nature of Christ? Was Jesus divine or human, fully divine, fully human, a little bit of both? Like, what was Jesus? And they're trying to make sense of this, and they're trying to make sense of Jesus's nature on multiple levels, both on what Jesus was and what Jesus taught, and also what was Jesus's role in kind of the history of salvation. Like when I say salvation history, what I mean is like, because there was this whole notion in the Bible, right, that humans were created, and then there was the fall, right, in which the whole business with the apple in the Garden of Eden, and they were kicked out of the Garden of Eden, this original sin idea, and that because of that original sin, humans have inherited this kind of distance from, or inability to be saved, distance from God, ability to sin, and that Christ in some ways comes along to kind of resolve that issue. So like, how does Jesus do that? These are questions that the early Christians are trying to figure out, and I think that that's why this transfiguration happens in a way, Lori, is because there had to be something, not only the baptism, but there had to be something in the story which said, okay, this guy not only is baptized, because we can all be baptized, but this guy in particular, something is, he's going to experience something that the rest of us don't experience. He's going to be singled out in a way that the rest of us aren't. And because, we don't have transfiguration ceremonies in our church. We have baptism ceremonies, but we don't have transfiguration ceremonies, because that doesn't happen to us. Yes, Sarah. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry.
All right.
I was interested in the word transfiguration, and it was quite clear that it's not a change from within. It's a change transformed outwardly. So there's this exalted spiritual brilliance, and it's quite clear that Christ is something special.
Mm-hmm.
And the disciples hear God's voice for what may be the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And the suggestion was made that this is a real pivotal moment.
Mm-hmm.
It's when the temporal meets the sacred, and perhaps you can see Christ as being the bridge between heaven and earth.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And there's this sense that this, I think in a lot of the traditions, and particularly I think the Orthodox tradition, and that this is the moment when Christ really fully becomes divine, right?
Mm.
There's this sense that the baptism was one stage in kind of the movement towards this call towards Christ's ministry, but it's really the transfiguration when I think is the tradition, that the transfiguration is when Christ in the narrative, when Christ becomes fully human. I'm sorry, fully divine, which is an interesting, and as you say, pivotal moment in the narrative. So does that help at all, Lori, in terms of your,
Very helpful.
yeah?
And the other thing,
Yeah.
may I add?
Please.
Now, I might not get this as clearly as you're going to explain it, Mark, I'll betcha. But Lori said, why does this happen? And one of the threads of thought that I read was that this happens now before the crucifixion to kind of keep the beacon of light, keep the hope in the people, help them to realize that there will be life after death, or there will be something to hope for. Maybe they don't know about the life after. Of course, they don't know that yet. Mm-hmm. But this particular moment can give them something to hang on to in the dark time.
Yeah, yeah, and in a very tangible way with respect to this light kind of brilliance kind of thing. And you have that there's a kind of resonance with that the passages from the birth narratives in Luke where this, you know, and also in Isaiah where there's this kind of a light came in the darkness, and the darkness and the light was not overcome, kind of thing. So yeah, that's lovely. So I think that in terms of the narrative, this is a crucial moment, and in terms of understanding who Christ was, this is a crucial moment, and this study of the Christ's nature is something that, you know, is never ending. It's been going on for thousands of years, and it continues to this very day in all of our, I think, in all of our minds and in all of our hearts, because this is part of the mystery that is kind of at the core of our religion, of our faith. You've heard me preach about this kind of stuff in the past, and how I'm a little bit impatient with this notion that, you know, that Christ came along to kind of balance the score for us. And I personally, I don't, you know, I kind of hope that the universe is not set up in that way, in such a way that you know, that there's, you know, kind of a balance sheet, and, you know, and we have to be kind of put into that balance, and that we get tipped over towards the good side by somebody else's kind of horrible sacrifice that they have to go through on our behalf. And yet that's very much, you know, that's very much part of the tradition. And this story may help set up that as part of that tradition. But then there's that other, I want to make sure that we have time for this. Oh, we're doing okay for time. There's the other thing that I think that Deb, maybe one of the reasons why you brought, was this did you bring this verse to us?
At the end, when you preached on the Transfiguration earlier this year, mm-hmm. I remember emailing Vicki and saying to her, why does it have to be a secret?
Right.
So it was more, you know, I you know, that's what really bothers me about this whole story, because that was another secret that they were asked to keep. Yeah. And it was like, why is he always telling us that not to tell anybody? Right. You know, it seems to defeat his purpose. Right. Yeah, absolutely. So they made so this is you're really onto something here, Deb, and the theologians have been puzzling over, and scholars have been puzzling over this for generations, and this is a well-known theme in Mark, this messianic secret, and it shows up here in the Transfiguration, and it shows up here. I pulled out a couple of other places here
where it shows up in particularly in Mark. And it does, as we looked in the earlier slide when we looked at the synoptics, in this particular story for the Transfiguration, the messianic secret shows up in all three of the synoptics. In all three it says, "Keep hush, hush, keep quiet." But it tends to be a Markan thing. Like Mark, for whatever reason, really likes this business of keeping it under wraps. Like, don't let the cat out of the bag. Like,
Mystery.
kind of thing. And one of the things that they've noticed, one of the things that scholars notice, if you look here at Mark 1, 41 through 45, which is the second one here, I think it's this one, but one of the peculiar things about the messianic secret is that the demons that Jesus kicks out of people when he heals them, the demons recognize it. The demons know who he is. But the disciples are taking their time to figure it out. Like it's kind of like, and again, this is a situation for us in which we know, and the demons know, and Jesus knows, and God knows, presumably, but the disciples are like taking their time figuring it out, right? They're really taking their time. And why the secretiveness? It's something that is really strange, and I'm not sure that I have a really good adequate answer for it. But one of the things, there's this scholar, his name is Reed, W-R-E-D-E, and he, I think, if I'm understanding it correctly, and I know that my Bible teachers might be kind of upset with me right now because I think they probably went over this quite a bit, and I'm having a little bit of trouble kind of getting it across. But if I'm understanding it correctly, I think what Reed, his deal was he was kind of suggesting that this was a kind of an after the fact kind of addition to Mark, and that it was kind of the early Christians who were kind of putting in this business about the messianic secret. And the reason they were, and I think if I'm not mistaken, the theory is that they were doing that because they didn't themselves really quite know what was going on with what they really believed about Christ in terms of, in other words, their understanding of Christ's role and Christ's kind of messianic personality was still in development when Mark was written, and and Mark is considered to be the first of the Gospels, so it was considered to have been written around 60 AD. Approximately, maybe 50 years after the death of Jesus, and they were still kind of trying to figure out what Jesus meant to them. And this messianic secret business might have been kind of them trying to kind of have their cake and eat it too, a little bit, in terms of trying to figure out what Jesus was. Now, I'm not sure, that doesn't seem very adequately to answer the question, but it's a very clear motif that goes all the way through Mark and through the other synoptics as well. And I wonder if any of you have any reactions, any impressions or theories, but possibly for why would Jesus want to keep it a secret?
Mark, I kind of wonder if he really thought they were going to keep it a secret.
Yeah.
I mean, you tell people don't say anything, and then they go off and tell their best friend and tell their best friend not to say anything.
Right. Could have been reverse psychology, huh?
Yeah. In the 3 passages that you had up, and I can't remember which gospel it is now, the last one was the only one that said they didn't say anything. The other 2 don't say that.
Oh, that's right. So I think it was Luke. Maybe was the one.
I think it was. Yeah.
Yeah, that said, and they didn't say, and they kept it a secret. They
Yeah.
were very quiet about. The other 2 were like, oh, well, he told me to keep it a secret, but they didn't say whether they did or not.
Right.
Right.
And that is not human nature.
Right. It's almost like
Yeah.
a forbidden fruit kind of thing, right, Mary Lou? Like, whatever you do, don't eat from that tree.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
like whatever you do, don't tell my secret. And yeah. Right.
I guess the only thought that I have about that is even right from the very beginning, when the 3 wise men came for his birth, and they had to hold the secret and not go back and tell Herod where they found him.
Nice. Yeah.
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 And so they had to go back a different way. And I guess the way I look at it is there was a plan
Yeah.
of what Jesus was supposed to do.
Uh-huh.
And if the cat was out of the bag too early,
Yeah.
things might have changed. You know, the Jewish leaders or even perhaps the Romans wouldn't have liked this and taken matters into their hands and not had things happen the way they were supposed to.
Interesting. So if the cat was let out of the bag, then it might have jumped into the works and thrown a wrench into the works.
And I guess the other thing is that if the disciples who were with him day in and day out had a hard time figuring it out, what about everybody else?
Right.
If they started hearing these stories.
Right. Right.
I sometimes wonder too whether it's partly, and I can't remember the exact, I don't remember what verses I'm thinking of, but there's something about in one of the Gospels, Jesus says that someone who believes without proof is more dear to him than someone that sees the proof first. And I don't remember exactly what, but I'm wondering if this is the thought occurred to me that perhaps this is kind of the same way that, yeah, if you know I'm the Messiah, then I don't know whether you really believe me or not. You know, it's like, why, if you know that I am from God,
right,
and you do everything I tell you to do, are you doing it because you really believe, or are you doing it because you're afraid of God, kind of thing? You know, so that maybe he's trying to get people to be independent in making their decisions. You know, okay, Peter, you've decided that I am the Messiah. Don't say anything because I want other people to figure it out on their own too. Kind of.
Great. I love.
You know, I don't know, but that's the only. That's what makes more sense. That's the only thing that I've come up with. But
I think you figured it out, Deb.
Yeah.
I don't know about that, but it's like it still bothers me. It's like, why not? Go ahead and let everybody know.
That's great. I think you need to submit that to a biblical journal. I think that's all I
got. That's all I got. I don't have enough other words. Those biblical journal articles need a whole lot of gobbledygook first.
Yeah. Well, no, but I really like, in a way, when you were talking, that it reminds me of like the problem that rich people have when they get married. Because it's like, I don't have that much money in my bank account, because like you don't know whether the person is in love with you or your money, right? So it's like, so there's kind of like that dynamic going on where it's like, oh, are you appreciating me for my teaching, or are you appreciating me because I'm, super special, yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I like that. That's really, really interesting. Yeah. Wow. Huh. I didn't have that problem when I was getting married. But
Me neither.
Me neither.
well, yeah, that's really, really, I think this is one of the great reasons why we have these Bible studies, right? Because we put all our minds together and we come up with new things. That's really terrific. I love that. That's great. Never thought of that one. So finally, I guess I want to, ask the question again, the question that we ask at the end of every Bible study, which is, how does what we've looked at today, how does it affect us in terms of how we think about God, and also whether or not it helps us, either challenges us or comforts us. And how do we actually imagine Christ's nature? That's something that I love. Like, I think I preached about this quite recently, is that I just really love the confusion, of I enjoy kind of living within that confusion of not really knowing about Christ's nature. But I guess I wonder what you folks think, what this story may tell us about Christ's nature, and whether that is something that is helpful or confusing or challenging. Yes, Sarah.
Something came out in a very, very sweet way to me in this particular passage that has never happened before. In the past, when we've heard God bellowing out of the clouds, and it's very intimidating.
Yeah.
I read a discussion about him saying that this was his son whom he loved. He was beloved. And so God loves, and it sort of implies that he wants to interact, that he wants to seek relationship with you. And by saying by describing what we consider to be a human emotion, the love, it makes God just a little bit more accessible, a little bit more knowable, and to me, a little bit more sweet. I mean, this wasn't some commanding voice out of the clouds. This was somebody who said, "This is my son, I love him." And if he loves his son, then you can understand that, and you can have a relationship with a being like that. It
Wow.
just made, it hadn't struck me that way before.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's wonderful.
But don't tell anybody. I'm sorry. We're supposed to tell people. I'm sorry. At this point, we're past that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that in the baptism too is when there is a voice from the clouds, the voice says, "This is my beloved," but it's more of a proclamation, perhaps. And it's interesting to think of, like, the moment that a person becomes, like, if you think about it, as the moment that a person becomes most divine is the moment when that person is loved. Like, that's a great thing, isn't it? It's like a wonderful theological and kind of pastoral message, that the moment that we're most divine is the moment when we are loved. That's great. It's powerful. Thank you for bringing that up, Sarah. It's like, it's the heart of the message that we have, that we've been a little bit distracted from by all this other strangeness. You know, because it is, I mean, there's a lot going on in this. I guess another thing that we haven't touched on at all which I think is an important and big part of this passage as well, is the fact that Elijah and, well, we kind of barely touched on it, that Elijah and Moses are there, which is really suggestive of the fact that Jesus is understood to be the culmination of Jewish prophecy, right?
Mm.
So, and that they're there, they're not only there, but they're kind of, at least in most of the traditional depictions of this, they're kind of a little bit lower level than Jesus. They're kind of depicted as being kind of not subservient to, but a little bit lesser than Jesus. And so that, you know, is probably designed to chagrin Jews, but also, you know, it must have been a very intentional thing for the gospel writers to kind of set Jesus up as kind of the a very important guy that is related very intimately with the tradition. Bring us back a little bit. Sorry about that.
And both of those prophets were very close to God, and also very much in service to others, lived in service to others.
Yeah.
In my fundamental commentary here, they give three options of why they were there. Either they represent the Old Testament saints,
yeah,
or they represent the law and the prophets,
right, law and the prophets,
or they represent saints who have died and those who have been translated. So it's a whole different.
Yeah, but both Moses and Elijah, we know, was, you know, disappeared on a chariot up into the sky.
Yeah.
And Moses, I think we don't really know. His death is pretty much shrouded in mystery. We don't really know what happened to him. But that kind of leads us to believe that Jesus is going to have, there's going to be something unusual, perhaps, about how he dies. So yeah, so there's
something you said, Mark, that in the reading it shows that Jesus is above them.
Yeah.
And it says in the New Testament, it just says that he's talking with them.
Yeah, yeah.
It doesn't say any level in there that they're equal. They're all talking.
Right.
So
right.
I mean, I never got that Jesus above.
Yeah.
At the transfiguration time, the light, the whole 9 yards. I get he's above them at that point, but
right.
but I don't get it. I never got that they were not up to par with him.
Yeah.
Throughout the rest of it.
Yeah, you're totally right. Actually, Brenda, what I've done there is I was referring to like kind of artistic depictions, which is totally different, right? It's not the text. So it's very important what you just said. You pointed out that, oh, wait a second, Reverend Mark.
Well, because I never saw it that way, and I'm like, wait a minute, where did he get that? And I went back and I was just rereading it. I was, it isn't there. But I don't see in my mind Jewish above, Christianity above. I don't see. I see equalness. So I just see the tether between the two, and that's where that's where we came from, Jewish. I mean, he was a Jew. I mean, so many up till I remember my mother and father, when I was learning things like that, they had not. And it was like, whoa, don't talk about that in the house. Because they aren't going to understand it. They didn't get it. They didn't get the Jewish.
Yeah.
My thoughts were that was why God's voice boomed in the cloud, was to put him above the other two.
Ooh.
because the other disciples wanted to build 3, whatever, tabernacles or whatever.
Right.
And that Jesus or God came and said, this is my son
Wow.
that I love.
Interesting.
So in my mind, it was, they were trying to make him equal and God was saying, no, he isn't equal.
Hmm.
That was
interesting. I never thought of that either. I never
Wow.
thought of that either.
Nice.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Peter's, is it Peter who isn't it Peter who makes the suggestion of building dwellings or the tabernacles? It's kind of a peculiar thing for him to say in a way, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
Like if you imagine yourself in that situation, like, I guess what would you say? I mean, I don't know what I would say if I was placed in that situation. But it seems like a little bit of an odd thing to say. Let me build. Wait. Oh my gosh! There's all these people here. Let's build 3 tabernacles. How are we gonna?
Well, maybe he was so terrified he was a little off kilter.
Yeah. Perhaps.
See, I still can't understand how they knew them. They didn't have pictures. They didn't have anything that told them that that was Moses and that was Elijah. Not that they couldn't have found out some other way, but it doesn't give us any clue that there was a gesture from Moses that would have
Right.
told him that he was Moses or something,
He was holding to
his name tag. The limp, everything else, I don't know. But I mean, there was nothing that tells us how they know that they are Elijah. And
I think in the Gospel of Luke it says, and they weareth a tag that saith, my name is Moses.
And one of the things that I got out of it was, you think of the booming from the clouds and God talking down to us, kind of ties in with Isaiah from last week.
What my ways are not your ways?
Yeah, him being above us.
That's right. Yeah, very literally, it comes, my knowledge is above your knowledge, and which was from last week. Yeah.
When I went back to read those verses, and there appeared to them Elijah with Moses, who were talking with Jesus. So I can have this picture in my head of the disciples watching these 3 beings conversing, and maybe Jesus is saying, "Hi, Moses. Hi, Elijah," or something, that kind of. I mean, it's like I'm looking at it from Peter's point of view. He sees these 3 guys talking. I guess if I were to watch someone, I might catch a name or something when, hi, Lori, hi, Liz, hi, Brenda.
I get you. Oh, I understand it, but it's like, there's nothing in that text that says how they know him.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's good.
And I think Peter somehow recognizes that who these other 2 people are, and they're just as important as this glowing Jesus. And I think you're right. He's scared, and he goes and tries to, what will we do? Well, we know we build these booths for, I don't know.
Yeah.
It always kind of surprised me in a way that they just took it as, oh, well, here's Moses and Elijah. Let's do this. And they weren't frightened by these 2 people that just all of a sudden appeared that they've always read about and heard about and were taught about. But when God speaks, they're really scared. But they're not frightened by these 2 prophets just appearing and talking to Jesus. That didn't frighten them.
Yeah.
Could it be possible, is this a really awful thing to say, but could it be possible that they're just thrown in there to make the story better?
Always that possibility.
The whole thing might have been thrown in there.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
When you say they, do you mean Moses and Elijah?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There might be some symbolic value to that.
oh, there's no question there's symbolic value, right? I mean, because, you know, if you saw me talking to Joe and Henry on the street, that's one thing. If you see me talking to Abraham Lincoln and George Washington, that's another thing
Yeah,
altogether.
right,
And it would make a much better story and a much more effective story.
Yeah.
right. Mhm.
Yeah.
And that is part of this, you know, that is part of this message. You know, the stories are good stories. They're captivating stories, mysterious, enlightening, and all those things. That's important.
Yeah.
And intentional. They're intentional
Yeah,
stories.
and intentional,
Right.
right.
I want to
And I
know,
like that other line.
I want
Go
to
ahead,
know
Mary Lou.
why the other disciples weren't invited up the mountain.
Yeah. And I
What
noticed,
were they doing?
Too crowded. Mhm.
Well,
and another thing that I noticed, because I made the Monday, Thursday thing yesterday, which I'm going to send out to all of you, is I think, if I'm not mistaken, Mary Lou, it's the same three that get invited to go to Gethsemane. Isn't that right?
right.
Mhm.
Mm.
Yep.
So it's those three are really like, they're,
Well, it says it. I have the learning Bible thing, and it says that these are the three disciples that were often with him at times of importance.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I don't know if he intentionally knew that it's an important time. Take these, go, do, or
I
what.
know.
I mean, I have no idea.
So who is it?
Dear.
It's Peter. Is it Peter, John, and James? Is that who it is?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And Peter is the one who later, not only there's the denial, but there's also the you're the one upon which the church
Yeah,
is going
The
to.
rock.
It's gonna
on
be
which the church
blessed,
is
yeah.
built, yeah. Mhm.
Yeah,
So very interesting.
Just speculating, but maybe they can keep the secrets better.
They don't
Which one of
gossip.
you guys are good at keeping secrets?
they're non-gossipers.
Or maybe they were chosen because they were not good at keeping secrets.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the whole question of the Trinity really came up to me
Uh,
in this. You know, the voice saying, "This is my son."
uh-huh,
Well, my belief is Jesus was God
uh-huh.
and continues to be God,
Yeah,
but came to earth to know us better.
yeah,
You know, so it really, I have a problem with the cloud speaking and all of that.
right,
Hmm.
right. That's a Christological issue you're dealing with right
Yeah.
there. And it's a real one, right?
Yeah.
And in some ways, you know, we have the limitation of storytelling, human storytelling, you know, is trying to kind of grapple with these issues, the very issue that you're talking about, Mary Lou.
Yep.
So that's really it's really that's super interesting. And what you say about Trinity, I'm just noticing when you said that, Mary Lou, there's all these threes all over this story, right?
Yep.
Everything is in threes.
Yeah, three disciples, three men.
Yeah.
Jesus, Moses, Elijah, and then
Yeah.
It's a magical number.
Hmm.
Three
It is.
tabernacles, three disciples, three figures in the sky.
Mm.
Yeah. Wow. I love these Bible studies are so great, aren't they? Oh my God.
They're wonderful.
Hmm.
Um, I want to be aware of our time. We're a little over. But before we go, I think this is probably pretty obvious, and maybe we've touched on it already, but we've talked a lot about the theological side of, like, kind of the Christological side of this, of what it means in terms of divinity and humanity and stuff like that. But I wonder if there's anything more in terms of the pastoral side, the how we think of this story in terms of the comfort that we can get from it.
I just love what Sarah said, because
Yeah,
I never thought of that before.
I do too. It's beautiful.
Mm.
Yeah. I
Look-
don't think of it as a pastoral passage,
Yeah,
and that made me see it in a different way.
yeah, yeah, totally. I agree.
Mm.
I've never thought of this as a pastoral passage either, but that
Yeah.
but that idea, right? That the moment that you're most loved is the moment when you're most divine.
Yeah.
That's a great, great idea.
Mhm.
Liz, you were going to say something.
No, just that again, from our view, where we're we know everything, the whole story.
Hmm.
That the message, "This is my son," I love my son, is comforting based on the aftermath. That it just seems it's unthinkable that someone would allow their child to be killed in and so in the reverse, sort of looking backwards, that message of "This is my son, I love him," is somewhat comforting, and not in the narrative, but the fact that we are aware of the whole story.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's what I see.
Mhm.
I also see as God speaks down through the cloud and whatnot, the tie between, I mean, we often look up. When you think of God, you look up.
Hmm.
I mean, people say he's in heaven, he's up there. I say he's down here with us. And so Jesus was here and God was there, but the tie between the two, it just is so clear with all the white dazzling and the white cloud. I
Hmm.
mean, it just makes it so much, the tie is there.
Hmm.
That can be either way
Yeah.
for anybody. I just feel that I feel God is closer down here than he is up there. He just doesn't sit up there on his throne and talk to us or whatever. He's with us here, going through the good, bad, and the uglies that we have every day. And
Mhm.
I certainly hope so.
but that's how I feel, that tie is there, that he's
Yeah.
not just above us, he's with us. And
Well, one of the translations, instead of saying overshadowed, said the cloud enveloped them.
Oh, nice.
Mm.
So,
And that-
and when I've always, I mean, in my Bible, it says overshadowed, so you kind of get that part, but in my mind, I've always kind of felt like it surrounded them.
Well,
And so God's with us.
Well, in this Learning Bible, it's a different translation. You don't have you didn't have in the group, and it says that a cloud passed over and covered them.
Huh.
So I mean,
Yeah.
it
I always saw
enveloped.
a big foggy scene on
Yeah.
top
Yeah,
there
right,
with
yeah.
a bright light in the middle of it.
Yep, and it's just like. But anyway,
And I guess another thing that I just want to briefly mention is that I think the first time I preached on the Transfiguration when I was at UCJ, it just so happened that that Owen had told me a story the day before about some folks who were in recovery, and how these folks who had been kind of close to, really down and out and close to being completely lost, had been in recovery, and how these folks were described as glowing,
Mhm.
and and I think this last time also when I preached about the Transfiguration, I guess this is kind of my tendency is I also focused on this glow, right, as this way, as kind of an expression of poetic expression of our of love that's manifested in us, the life force that's manifested in us. Is another, since that's kind of my tendency is to think of things in terms of poetry. That's another way of kind of opening up this story. Well, another brilliant meeting. Would anybody like to pray us out this morning?
Hmm.
I will.
Okay.
Well, thank you, God, for bringing us together again here to learn again from your word and to learn from each other's hearts and to have your story open before us through the magic of each other's wonderful minds. We celebrate this and as a great blessing that you give us. And we do so in the name of your son, Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Excellent. Well,
Bye, everybody.
I'm gonna share a video for Monday, Thursday. So the Monday, Thursday video should be out shortly. Hoping in the next couple of hours. So.
And no Friday tomorrow?
Oh yes, thank you. We will. Thank you for reminding me, Sarah. We won't have a social hour. We won't have a social hour on Good Friday. I think that there's something perhaps a little bit peculiar about that. So, but so I'll also send that out as well.
Thanks.
Okay.
Everyone stay safe.
Stay
Yeah.
safe. See you Sunday.
See you
Thank
all.
you, Liz and Deb, for the homework.
Yes.
No problem.
And
I can babysit and do homework.
and Vicky for all the coordination. Vicky, really.
Yes.
Yes.
Thanks.
And don't forget, if you have some other verses that you'd like us to examine, keep them coming.
Okay.
Absolutely.
You bet.
Sounds good.
Or if you have
Bye.
ideas, Mark. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Till Sunday.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.